The twin suns of seven sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and deep blue. Across the colony, families began their evening rituals. They closed the membrane doors of their dwellings, dimmed their bioluminescent skin to soft resting colors, and gathered their young ones close. Matriarch watched her three spawn chase each other around the main chamber of their home. Their small bodies flickered with excited light, blues and greens dancing across their translucent skin. The oldest, Myra, was teaching her younger siblings a game that involved touching the walls and running away before anyone could catch them. "Enough," said, her voice carrying the harmonic tones of an adult. "It is time for evening meal." The children stopped their game and floated toward the eating area. Bodies were light and delicate, built for their low-gravity world. They moved with a grace that made them seem almost like they were swimming through air. Place 3 bowls of nutrient gel on the low table. Myra and the middle child began eating immediately, but the youngest pushed his bowl away with one of his 4 thin arms. "I do not want this," said. His skin flickered with stubborn orange light. "I want sweet pods." "Sweet pods are for special occasions," replied. "You will eat your nutrient gel." "No." Felt her patience stretch thin. It had been a long day. The colony's atmospheric processors had needed repairs, and she had spent hours helping the engineering team seal microfractures in the outer dome. She was tired, and she did not have energy for an argument with a child who had not yet seen his 5th cycle. She said, and her voice dropped to a lower register, "Do you know what happens to children who disobey their parents?" The young's glow dimmed slightly. He had heard this tone before. "No," he said, though his voice was less certain now. "They attract attention," said. "The wrong kind of attention. They attract the attention of humans." Myra and stopped eating. The word hung in the air like a cold wind, looked at his siblings, then back at his mother. His orange glow faded to uncertain yellow. "Humans are just stories," he said. "Elder told the older children about them, and they said humans are not real. They said adults made them up to scare us." Settled onto her resting pad, folding her limbs beneath her. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but serious. "The older children are wrong," she said. "Humans are very real. They come from a world called Earth in a star system far from here, and the stories we tell about them are not inventions. They are warnings." Picked up his bowl of nutrient gel but did not eat. His large, dark eyes stayed fixed on his mother. Even Myra had stopped pretending not to listen. "What are humans?" asked. Skin shifted to the pale blue of memory and teaching. "They are creatures from a death world," she said. "A planet with extreme gravity that crushes their bodies every moment of their lives. A planet with wild temperature changes that would kill us in hours. A planet filled with predators and poisons and diseases." "How do they survive?" asked, forgetting to chew. "That is the terrible thing," said. "They do not just survive, they conquered. They became the apex predator of a world designed to kill everything. And do you know how they did it?" The children shook their heads, their glow now the pale white of fear and fascination. They refused to stop. "Let the words settle before continuing. I will tell you the tale of the unending hunt. This is a story passed down through our people since the first contact with humans, long before any of you were born." She dimmed the lights in their dwelling with a gesture. The only illumination came from the soft glow of their own bodies. "On Earth there once lived great creatures called mammoths. They were massive beasts, many times larger than any. They had thick skin and long curved tusks, and they were built to survive the frozen wastelands of their world. They were faster than humans. They were stronger than humans. They were better suited to the cold than humans." "Did the humans run away?" asked. "No," said. "The humans hunted them, and this is how they did it. A group of humans would find a mammoth and begin to chase it. The mammoth would run. It was faster, so it would escape easily. It would run until it felt safe, and then it would stop to rest and eat." So the mammoth won, Myra said. The mammoth thought so, replied. It would rest and recover, but then on the horizon it would see something. The humans were still coming. They had not stopped. They had not rested. They had simply continued walking toward the mammoth, following its trail. The children's glow flickered with unease. The mammoth would run again. It would escape again. It would rest again. And the humans would keep coming, always coming. They could not run as fast as the mammoth, but they could walk longer. They could keep moving when other creatures needed to stop. They had bodies that could travel for days without rest, that could sweat to cool themselves while running, that could eat while moving and drink while walking. That is not possible, whispered. It is, said, and so the hunt would continue. The mammoth would run and rest, run and rest. Each time it would be a little more tired. Each time the humans would be a little closer. After one day the mammoth would be exhausted. After 2 days it could barely stand. And the humans would still be coming, walking slowly, patiently, inevitably. What happened to the mammoth? Asked. His nutrient gel sat forgotten in his hands. Eventually, the mammoth could not run anymore. It would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would finally catch up to it. They did not need to be faster. They did not need to be stronger. They simply needed to refuse to stop. The dwelling was silent. The 3 children sat motionless, their lights pulsing with fear. This is what humans are, said. Creatures who will not stop, who will not give up, who will keep coming no matter how far you run or how long you hide. They call themselves persistence predators. They are patient beyond any patience we can imagine. And that is why you must always be careful, always be good, always obey. Because if you attract the wrong attention, if a human decides to hunt you, there is nowhere in the galaxy you can run that they will not follow. Picked up his bowl and began eating his nutrient gel very quickly. Later that night, after her children were safely in their sleeping pods, stepped outside her dwelling. Other parents were doing the same, gathering in small groups to share the day's events. She joined a circle of neighbors near the community garden. Elder Smate, Counselor Thresh, was telling his own daughter about humans. His voice drifted through the evening air. They cross oceans, he was saying, vast bodies of toxic water that cover most of their planet. They build vessels of dead plant matter and float across these oceans for months at a time. Many die. The survivors keep going. Another parent, a young father named, was warning his adolescent son. They climb their highest mountain simply because the mountains exist. They call the tallest one Everest. Hundreds of humans have died trying to reach its peak. More humans keep trying. The bodies of the dead remain on the mountain, frozen, and the living climb past them to continue upward. A group of elders sat near the garden's edge, speaking to teenagers who were old enough to hear the more disturbing tales. They cut each other open, one elder was saying. With sharp tools they slice into their own kind. They remove parts that are broken. They put in new parts. They sew the openings closed, and the patient often survives. One of the teenagers made a sound of disgust. That cannot be true. It is true. They call it surgery. They have done it for thousands of their years. They get better at it. Now they can even transplant organs from one human to another. They can take a heart from a dead human and put it inside a living one. Listened to these stories and felt the familiar chill that every felt when discussing humans. It was not just fear, though fear was part of it. It was something deeper. It was the understanding that the universe had produced something that operated by rules they could not comprehend. She was about to return home when Counselor Thresh approached her, his glow troubled. "You have heard the news?" he asked. "What news?" "A transmission reached the High Council today. A human diplomatic vessel has entered our star system. They wish to establish formal contact with our colony." Felt her glow fade to the pale gray of deep unease. How long until they arrive? 2 days, perhaps less. Their ships are fast. Around them, other parents fell silent as the news spread. The stories they had been telling suddenly felt less like distant legends and more like immediate warnings. "What do we do?" asked. Counselor Thresh looked toward the stars now appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, growing closer with each passing moment, humans were coming. "We prepare our children," he said quietly, "and we hope the stories are not as true as we fear." The human ship descended through Seven's atmosphere on a column of controlled fire. It was an ugly vessel by standards, all sharp angles and thick metal plating. It looked like it had been built to survive violence rather than to glide gracefully through space. The diplomatic corps waited at the landing zone, their bodies arranged in precise ceremonial formation. Their glow was the steady blue of formal occasions, but noticed that several of his colleagues were cycling through nervous yellows at the edges of their limbs. He could not blame them. He felt the same unease despite his attempts to hide it. Was young, barely past his adolescent years, and this was his first assignment as a diplomatic aide. He had volunteered for this duty partly because it was an honor, and partly because he wanted to prove something to himself. His entire life, he had listened to the stories about humans. His parents had used them to keep him obedient. His teachers had referenced them to explain the dangers of the wider galaxy. Every grew up with humans as the ultimate cautionary tale, but had always wondered if the stories were exaggerated. After all, every species told tales about other species. Every culture had its monsters. Perhaps humans were simply the version of a frightening legend, made larger and more terrible through countless. Today he would find out. The ship's landing ramp extended with a mechanical hiss, adjusted his posture, and prepared himself for his first sight of living humans. 3 figures descended. They were bipedal as the archives had described. 2 legs, 2 arms, a single head mounted on a thick neck. Their bodies were dense and compact, wrapped in strange artificial coverings that the briefing materials called clothing. They moved with an unsettling economy of motion, each step placed with purpose. The human in front was a female, according to the briefing. She had dark hair streaked with gray, and her face was arranged in what training identified as a smile. The expression was meant to indicate friendliness. It showed her teeth. Felt his glow flicker nervously. The human was displaying her teeth as a greeting, the same teeth that her ancestors had used to tear the flesh of prey. "Greetings," the female human said. Her voice was deep and strong. "I am Ambassador representing the United Earth Coalition. We are honored by your welcome." Ambassador walked toward the delegation with her hand extended. She moved with a slight unevenness, one leg landing harder than the other. As she came closer, realized she was limping. One of her limbs was damaged. She was still walking on it. High Counselor stepped forward to meet her, accepting the human gesture of clasping hands. "We welcome you to 7, Ambassador. We hope your journey was pleasant." "A few bumps along the way," said, "but nothing we couldn't handle." Over the following days, served as the human's guide through the colony. He had been assigned this duty because of his language skills and his stated interest in studying other species. Now, as he spent hour after hour in the company of these 3 creatures, he began to understand why his people told the stories they told. It started with small things. On the second day, Ambassador invited to share a meal with the human delegation. He accepted, curious to observe their eating habits. What he witnessed disturbed him on a fundamental level. The humans ate dead things. This was known, of course, but watching it happen was different from reading about it. They consumed the flesh of animals, the bodies of plants, all processed into various forms and heated with fire. They put these things in their mouths, crushed them with their teeth, and swallowed. But the truly disturbing part was how casually they discussed violence during the meal. "This reminds me of my accident," said, gesturing at her leg. "Happened about 10 years ago. I was hiking in the Himalayas and took a bad fall. Went down about 40 meters before I hit a ledge. Calculated the distance. 40 meters was a fatal fall for any. He felt his glow pale. "What happened to you?" he asked carefully. "Broke my femur in 2 places, shattered my ankle, cracked 3 ribs," laughed. She was laughing. "Had to crawl about half a kilometer before my team found me. Spent 6 months in recovery." "You continued hiking after this?" "Of course, can't let one fall stop you." She took a bite of her food and chewed contentedly. "The mountains are beautiful that time of year." The human security officer, a large male called, nodded in agreement. "That's nothing. I knew a guy who fell off a cliff climbing and landed on his partner. Broke his partner's fall. Both of them survived with minor injuries." "Humans are sturdy," the third human said. Her name was Doctor, and she was a scientist studying biology. "We evolved on a high-gravity world. Our bones are dense, our muscles are strong, and our bodies are designed to absorb trauma." Did not know what to say. He excused himself shortly after and spent the evening reviewing his notes in his quarters. He had filled many pages with observations, but he was no closer to understanding humans. If anything, they were becoming more alien to him with each passing hour. The next day, he witnessed the incident with his hand. They were touring the atmospheric processing facility when it happened. Was examining one of the machinery panels, asking questions about how they filtered their air. He reached toward a component and sliced his hand on a sharp metal edge. Saw red blood begin to flow. Human blood. It was bright and startling against pale skin. "Ah, damn," said. He looked at his hand with mild annoyance. Immediately called for medical assistance. Human blood was flowing. The human was damaged. This was an emergency. But waved him off. "It's fine," he said. "Just a cut." He walked to a nearby water station, rinsed the wound under the stream, and pulled a small white package from his pocket. He wrapped the cloth around his hand, tightened it, and flexed his fingers experimentally. "Good as new," he said. "Now you were explaining the filtration process." Could not speak. The human had been injured. He had lost blood, and he was asking about air filters. "Do you not require medical treatment?" finally managed. Looked at his wrapped hand. "For this? Nah, it'll heal in a week or so, just need to keep it clean." "But you are bleeding. You are damaged." "A little damage never hurt anyone." Paused, then laughed at his own statement. "Well, I guess it technically hurts, but you know what I mean." Did not know what he meant. He could not imagine knowing what he meant. That evening, Doctor noticed that Glow had been cycling through stress colors for hours. She approached him in the garden where he often sat to organize his thoughts. "You seem troubled," she said, settling onto a bench beside him. Humans did not fold their limbs the way he did. They simply bent in the middle and rested their weight on flat surfaces. "I am trying to understand your species," admitted. "I am not succeeding." "What would you like to know?" Considered his question carefully. "Why do you deliberately put yourselves in danger? Your ambassador falls down mountains for entertainment. Your security officer treats injuries as minor inconveniences. Everything about your species seems designed to court death." Was quiet for a moment. "We don't see it that way. We evolved in an environment where danger was constant. If we stopped every time we were at risk, we never would have spread across our planet. So we learned to accept risk as part of life. We manage it, we prepare for it, but we don't let it stop us." "That is not logical." "Maybe not by your standards, but it's who we are." She smiled at him gently. "Let me tell you about something we do for fun. It's called camping." She described how humans would voluntarily leave their shelters to sleep outdoors in wilderness areas. Areas filled with predatory animals, poisonous plants, and unpredictable weather. They called this recreation. She described something called spicy food, where humans deliberately consumed plants that caused them physical pain because they enjoyed the sensation. She described marathon running, where humans would run for over 40 kilometers at a time, pushing their bodies until they experienced what they called runner's high, a chemical response to extreme physical stress that actually made them feel pleasure. By the time she finished, his glow had faded to the gray of profound confusion. "I believe the stories my parents told me," he said quietly. "I did not believe them before. I thought they were exaggerated. I was wrong." Looked at him with something like sympathy. "What stories did they tell you?" "The tale of the unending hunt, the humans who climbed mountains where their companions died, the humans who cut each other open to heal wounds." He paused. "They made you sound like monsters. And now that you've met us." Thought about this for a long moment. "Now I think the stories did not capture how strange you truly are. You are not monsters. Monsters would be easier to understand." The crisis came on the fifth day. Was accompanying the human delegation through the outer agricultural domes when the alarms began. The sound was sharp and urgent, a pattern that every recognized from childhood. Atmospheric contamination. A toxic pocket had drifted toward the colony, carrying concentrated gases that would kill any who breathed them for more than a few minutes. "What's happening?" Ambassador demanded. "We must evacuate to the sealed shelters," said. His voice was trembling. "Now, immediately. The toxins will reach this dome in minutes." Around them, workers were already moving toward the shelter entrances. Parents grabbed children. Elders were helped by younger community members. The evacuation was orderly but urgent, everyone moving as quickly as their delicate bodies would allow. The three humans exchanged a look that could not interpret. "Where are the shelters?" asked. "The nearest is 300 meters that direction," said, pointing. "Please, we must go." Instead of running toward the shelter, turned toward the commotion. A elder had collapsed near the dome entrance, overcome by panic and exhaustion. Two children stood beside him, crying, their glow flickering with terror. Said it was not a question or an order, it was simply acknowledgement. The security officer ran toward the elder. Ran. Had never seen a creature move that fast without machinery assistance. Reached the elder in seconds, assessed the situation, scooped up both children, and shouted something at the nearby adults about helping the old one. Ambassador, despite her damaged leg, moved toward a group of young who had become separated from their parents. She spoke to them in calm tones, gathered them around her, and began walking them toward the shelter. When one child was too frightened to move, she picked him up and carried him. Doctor Grab's arm. "Show me to the shelter. Are there medical supplies there?" "Yes, but—" "Then let's go, I can help." They reached the shelter as the first traces of toxic gas began to color the dome's atmosphere. Skin was cycling through panic colors, his body trembling with stress. He was not built for this kind of crisis. No was. But the humans seemed different. Their movements were quick and purposeful. Their voices were calm and commanding. They were stressed, could see that now, but the stress was making them more focused, not less. Returned from his third trip outside, carrying an elderly in his arms. His breathing was heavy, and there was a light sheen of moisture on his skin. Sweat, as briefing materials had called it. A cooling mechanism that allowed humans to maintain activity levels that would kill other species. "That's everyone from the agricultural dome," reported. "Perimeters clear." "Good work," was helping frightened children find their parents, her voice a steady anchor in the chaos. "How long until the toxic pocket passes?" "Perhaps 1 hour, perhaps 2, was trying to regain his composure. "There may be injuries," the elder who collapsed. "I'm treating him now," called from across the shelter. She had found the medical supplies and was applying them to the elder with steady, practiced hands. "Exhaustion and mild shock. He'll be fine with rest." Watched the three humans work. They were tired now, clearly tired, but they were not traumatized. They were checking on others, making sure everyone had water, telling jokes to calm frightened children. Ambassador was teaching a group of young a game that involved clapping hands, and their terrified glow was slowly warming to curious blue. When the crisis passed, When the atmosphere cleared and the sealed doors opened, sat in the shelter and stared at these impossible creatures. The stories were not exaggerated. If anything, they were understated. 3 months had passed since the human delegation departed from Seven. The colony had returned to its normal rhythms. The atmospheric processors hummed in their eternal cycle. The twin suns rose and set. Children played in the gardens while parents watched with soft glowing eyes. But something had changed. Matriarch noticed it first in her own dwelling. Young, who had once feared the very mention of humans, now asked about them constantly. He wanted to know more about Earth. He wanted to understand how humans lived. He had found recordings of the diplomatic visit in the colony archives and watched them repeatedly. "Mother," he said one evening, "why did the humans run back into the danger? Could have stayed safe in the shelter, but he went back 3 times. Why?" Did not have a good answer. The behavior confused her as much as it confused her son. "Perhaps we should ask someone who knows more," she said finally. "Would you like to visit Elder?" Elder was the oldest in their colony, having lived for over 200 cycles. He was the keeper of stories, the guardian of memory, and the most respected teacher in their community. His dwelling was simple but filled with data crystals containing records from across history. He greeted and with a warm amber glow. "I wondered when you would come," he said. "Many families have visited since the humans departed. They all have the same questions." Bounced with impatient energy. "I want to know about humans," he said. "Real things, not just scary stories." "The scary stories are real," Elder said gently. "Everything your mother told you about persistence hunting, about climbing mountains, about cutting bodies open for healing, all real. But I understand what you mean. You want to know more than just the frightening parts." He led them to a comfortable sitting area and settled onto his resting pad with the careful movements of great age. When he spoke again, his glow shifted to the pale blue of teaching. "I have collected human stories for many cycles," he said. "First from the original contact records, then from traders and travelers, and most recently from the diplomatic delegation that visited us. I have studied these creatures more than any other in our colony, and I will tell you what I have learned." Leaned forward eagerly. "Humans are dangerous," Elder began. "This is true. They are persistence predators who conquered a death world. They domesticated wolves, turning apex predators into loyal companions. They split atoms and walked on their moon. They have an emotion they call spite, which allows them to accomplish things purely because someone told them they could not." "I know all this," said impatiently. "Patience," Elder said. "I am building to something." He reached for a data crystal and activated it. A projection appeared in the air between them, showing images of Earth and its inhabitants. "But humans are more than just dangerous," he continued. "They are also capable of things we cannot fully comprehend. Let me tell you a different kind of story, a true story from human history." The projection changed to show a time period the humans called World War II. Elder explained the context briefly, how humans had fought a terrible conflict among themselves, and how one group had attempted to exterminate another group called Jews. "During this time," he said, "there was a young human girl. She was not Jewish. The people who wanted to kill Jews would not have harmed her if she had stayed silent. She was safe." Watched the projection with wide eyes. "But this girl chose to hide Jewish families in her home. She knew that if she was caught, she would be killed. She did it anyway. She did it for years, saving the lives of strangers who had no claim on her protection." "Why?" asked. "Because humans have a concept called conscience," Elder said. "A voice inside them that tells them right from wrong, and that causes them pain when they ignore it. This girl could not watch innocent people die when she had the power to save them. So she risked everything, including her life, for beings she had never met before." He showed another image of humans in white clothing working in places filled with disease. "These are doctors," he said. Healers. Throughout human history, healers have traveled to places where terrible sicknesses spread. They knew these sicknesses could kill them. Many did die, but more kept coming because people needed help, and humans who can help often feel they must. Another image, this one of a human soldier. This human was in a battle. An explosive device landed near his group of companions. He knew it would kill them all, so he covered it with his own body. He died, but his companions lived. He made this choice in less than a second, without hesitation. Was silent now, his glow cycling through colors that could not quite interpret. She felt the same confusion in herself. "I do not understand," finally said. "These stories are as strange as the scary ones. How can the same creatures be both?" Elder smiled, his glow warming to satisfied gold. "That is the question I have spent many cycles trying to answer," he said. "And I believe I finally understand. Listen carefully, young one, because this is the most important thing I can teach you about humans." He dimmed the projection and leaned forward. "Humans are not monsters. They are not heroes. They are something far more complex. They are creatures of extremes. The same relentless endurance that makes them terrifying predators also makes them refuse to abandon those they care about. The same stubbornness that drove them across frozen wasteland makes them fight against injustice long after others would surrender. Their capacity for violence is matched by their capacity for sacrifice." He paused to let this sink in. The scary stories are true. Humans will pursue their enemies without mercy. They will cross oceans and climb mountains and walk for days to destroy what threatens them. But this same determination works in the other direction. Humans will pursue their friends' enemies without mercy too. They will cross oceans and climb mountains and walk for days to rescue what they love. Thought about this for a long moment. Then he asked, "Is that why ran back into the danger? Because he cared about us?" "I believe so," Elder said. "The humans had only known us for a few days, but in that short time they had decided we were worth protecting. And once humans decide to protect something, they do not stop. They cannot stop. It is simply who they are." Finally spoke. "Then why do we tell the frightening stories to our children? Why not tell them this from the beginning?" "Because both truths are important," Elder said. "We tell the scary stories to teach caution. Humans are genuinely dangerous, and a who forgets that might not survive an encounter. But now that we are becoming allies with humans, we must learn the full truth. We must understand that their terrifying qualities can work in our favor if we earn their friendship." They talked for another hour before and returned home. The twin suns had set, and the colony was settling into its evening quiet. Was unusually thoughtful, his glow steady and contemplative. When they reached their dwelling, prepared him for sleep. She helped him into his sleeping pod and adjusted the temperature to his preference. Myra and were already asleep, their soft glow pulsing with peaceful rhythms. "Mother," said before she could leave, "will you tell me a human story? A real one, not a scary one." Settled beside his pod, she thought about the stories Elder had shared, and about the recordings of the diplomatic visit she had watched in the days after the humans departed. One story in particular came to mind. "There was a human named," she began. "He was an explorer like the ones who crossed oceans and climbed mountains, but he explored something far more dangerous. He explored other worlds." His glow brightened with interest. "Traveled to a planet called Mars. It was a dead world, hostile to all life, with toxic soil and thin air and freezing temperatures. He went there with other humans to study it and learn its secrets." She described how a terrible storm had separated from his companions, how they had believed him dead and left, how he had woken alone on a world where nothing could survive, millions of kilometers from home, with limited supplies and no way to contact Earth. "What did he do?" asked. "He solved one problem. Then he solved the next one, then the one after that. He was a botanist, a human who studies plants, so he found a way to grow food in toxic soil. He was an engineer, so he found ways to stretch his supplies and create water and maintain his shelter. Every day brought new challenges that should have killed him. Every day he refused to die. How long was he alone? Many human months, a very long time by their standards, long enough to drive most creatures mad with loneliness and despair, but kept working. He kept solving problems. He kept believing that if he solved enough of them, he would eventually go home. Did he? Smiled. Yes. His companions came back for him when they learned he was alive. They risked their own lives to return to that hostile world. They flew across the void of space because one of their own was in danger, and humans do not leave their people behind. That sounds like the stories Elder told, said softly, about the doctors who went to sick places and the soldier who covered the explosive. It is the same thing, agreed. Humans who refuse to stop. Humans who solve problems one at a time until they succeed. Humans who will not abandon each other, no matter how far the distance or how great the danger. His glow was soft now, the warm pink of comfort and safety. I think I understand, he said. Humans are scary because they never stop, but that also means they never stop helping, never stop trying, never stop caring about the people who are theirs. That is exactly right. I want to be like that, said quietly. Felt something shift in her hearts. For all of her son's life, she had used human stories to keep him obedient through fear. Now, for the first time, she saw a different possibility. Perhaps the stories could inspire rather than frighten. Perhaps her children could learn from humans not what to fear, but what to become. Then be like that, she said. When you face problems, solve them one at a time. When others need help, help them even when it is hard. And never, ever give up just because something seems impossible. Closed his eyes, his glow settling into the deep purple of approaching sleep. Tell me more about tomorrow. Tomorrow promised. She stepped outside into the night air. Across the colony, other dwellings glowed with the soft light of families settling for sleep. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the voice of a parent telling a child the tale of the unending hunt. But she also heard something new. In another dwelling, a different parent was telling a different story. The story of a human doctor who traveled into disease zones to save strangers. The story of a human soldier who gave his life for his companions. The story of a human explorer who refused to die on a hostile world. The stories were changing. The fear was still there, but it was making room for something else. Wonder, admiration, hope. And somewhere in the colony, a new generation of children were beginning to ask their parents a different question. Not are humans real, but can we be like them? The twin suns would rise again tomorrow. The diplomatic vessel would return someday. And when it did, they would be ready to greet their strange, terrifying, magnificent allies with a new understanding. Humans were not just monsters in the dark. They were proof that the universe could produce creatures who refused to stop, no matter what. Who would chase their goals across oceans and mountains and frozen wastelands. Who would protect what they loved with the same relentless determination they used to hunt their prey. And if they were fortunate, if they proved themselves worthy, perhaps the humans would count them among the things worth protecting. Looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building ships. They were solving problems. They were refusing to stop. She smiled and went inside to sleep, dreaming of a future where her children walked among the stars beside creatures who would never, ever give up.